Okay, hello English Lit students. This is hopefully quite a short lecture on how Wilde plays with the contrast between the city and the country in The Importance of Being Earnest, particularly in the scene in which Gwendolyn and Cecily meet and argue. Okay, so these are just some of the ideas around the difference between the town and the country that have existed well, since the early modern period, so even way back to Shakespeare. And when we say the town in particular, we kind of also mean London. So if you are smart aristocratic society, when you say town, you mean London. Okay, so these are some of the things that are positive about the town in this sort of opposition way of thinking about them, and some of the things that are opposite about the country. And there's some of them are opposites, but some of them aren't. Anyway, so the town is sophisticated. Okay, so I hope you all know what the word sophisticated means. It means being very knowing, having lots of understanding about lots of deep things and complex things. The town is fashionable, more fashionable than the country. Fashions start there first. They're always the first with anything new, and things only get to the country later. The town is very busy compared to the country, but that can be a good thing if you want activity and life and lots of people. It's very exciting. Town is pleasurable. There are lots and lots of pleasures available if you're in the town. In the 19th century, that was things like parks, theatres, music halls, art galleries. If you're upper class, the opera. Just lovely streets, shopping, lots of nice, pleasurable things to do. Oh, I put that as a positive. It's not positive, is it? It's morally dubious. Okay, so I don't think that's positive to say the town is morally dubious. Sorry, but I put it there because I wanted it to be opposite morally pure, I guess. So on the other hand, the way the country is different to the town can be seen positively. So the country is not sophisticated, but it is simple in a good way. The simple life. Everything's clear and easy because it's all just really nice and simple. The country is innocent. People there are straightforward. They're not involved in dodgy dealings. It can include sexual innocence. The country is quiet. Yeah, much less traffic, much fewer people, far fewer trades, all those things that make it much nicer and quieter. The country is more healthy than the town. The air is pure, the water is pure. There isn't as much human filth about as there would be in a 19th century city. And the country is associated with moral purity. There are fewer temptations. It's harder to hide. So people in the country are seen as being a more morally pure people. But there's some negatives as well. So the town, being sophisticated, can easily become immoral and wicked. So some of the things that go on in the towns are seen as being very immoral, and that includes sexual immorality. Towns are crowded in a way that can be very unpleasant, and the town is unhealthy, lots of pollution, lots of sewage and disgusting things like that. The bad things about the country, well, it's boring and it's tedious. There are none of the exciting, interesting things that you can have happening in the town. The country can also be seen as being stupid and backward. People who live there, they don't know what's going on. They don't hear the news. They don't keep up to date with things. They're just not very clever. And the country can be seen as unmannered because you're not spending all your time with nice society. You don't have the best smart manners that you would have if you're in the city. So now we're going to look at how Wilde plays with these when Gwendolyn meets Cecily. Gwendolyn is definitely a town person. Cecily has been brought up all the time in the countryside. And just a reminder of this is the rather paradoxical thing Lady Bracknell's already said to Jack in Act 1, talking about Gwendolyn. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolyn could hardly be expected to reside in the country. Okay, now that is nonsense. Simple and unspoiled things belong in the country. But the joke is Gwendolyn couldn't live in the country, yeah, because actually she's quite sophisticated. Okay, so when Gwendolyn and Cecily discover or believe they're both engaged to the same man, they drop their civility, particularly once the servants have left the scene, and they start being rude to each other. And Cecily at one point says to Gwendolyn, "When I see a spade, I call it a spade." This is an idiom. It's an idiomatic expression. It's just a saying, and it means I'm going to tell the truth as it is. I'm not going to be polite or embellish it. But Gwendolyn takes it literally and makes a dig at Cecily about about Cecily living in the countryside and being agricultural. So Gwendolyn, and Oscar Wilde adds that stage direction so that we know she's being rude. I am glad to say I've never seen a spade. Yeah, so the idea that she's much more sophisticated, much more civilized. She hasn't got anything to do with rural life like a spade. And then she says it is obvious our social spheres have been widely different. So she's making a link between living in the countryside and being a bit lower down the social ranking. Okay, and then when Cecily is offering her tea and cake, Gwendolyn and Wilde once again gives us these stage directions to show how she wants to put her ideas across. When Cecily asks if she takes sugar, she says, "No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore." And when Cecily offers her cake or bread and butter, she says cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays. Now, I'm not going to interpret these for you because there's a task at the end asking you to do it yourself. When Gwendolyn rather weirdly says, "I'm surprised to see so many flowers in the countryside," Cecily says, "Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London." Okay, and she's playing on the word common. Common meaning, at its literal meaning, there are lots of them, but common also being a synonym for ill-mannered, ill-bred, lower class. And then finally, her last dig at Gwendolyn is when she basically tells her she should leave. And she says, "No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighbourhood." And she's literally accusing Gwendolyn of being a bit of a woman with more than one man on the go, suggesting that Gwendolyn is probably engaged to more than one man and has to go around the country trying to find a man who will marry her. So that's also linked to the ideas of the town. So the tasks that I want you to have notes on this is to have a look at, in this scene, how does Wilde play with the ideas of the contrast between town and country. You could do it for the whole of the play because it is also mentioned in Act 1. The reasons that Jack wants to come to town, for example. Which conventions does he invert? So which ones does he turn upside down and which ones does he play along with? Okay, so that's that. Thank you.